Welcome to Dead Man Talking. Come with me as we step into the deep dark forest of fear and let us pray we see sunrise in the morning. Tonight's story, guys and girls, you are all very much enjoyed by the looks of things. 26,000 views in just a month's time for part 1, 2 and 3 of this story. Tonight's show is actually part 4. As ever, please do let us know down below in the comments what you thought. Please do like and share. It really does help build the channel and our community further. And of course, don't forget to hashtag TeamFEAR. And so, without further ado, let's get into tonight's story, entitled I Kill Monsters for an Interdimensional Government. Here are some stories. Part 4. Let's get straight into that. We've got to stop media like this. I was planning to get this part out rapidly, but here I am, late again. Funny how I have enough work ethic to slaughter monsters for a living, but not provide regular updates. Anyways, I've decided that I'd like to change direction somewhat with the type of stories I recount here. The past 3 have all been about the contracts I receive and how I go about them. But that's far from the only thing I've done in this line of work. I think there's plenty of interesting stories to tell outside of the actual killing job itself. And so, let me elaborate and give you a better glimpse into what my work in life consists of. Just as a side note, I did get that meeting with the boss I mentioned at the end of the last part, and it went superbly. He was so appreciative that I was able to complete my task despite being given such lackluster information on my targets that he gave me a couple of weeks off work to sort through and iron out the issues with the reports he was giving me. I desperately wanted to voice my opinions and tell him that a mandatory vacation won't be necessary, but I know better than to try and talk back to boss. At that point in my life, I had dedicated myself entirely to fulfilling contracts and doing schoolwork. I don't really have any hobbies or interests to speak of. They're nothing more than a waste of my time. I used to be a big reader, but ever since I got employed, reading reminds me too much of my work for me to enjoy it. It's hard to get engrossed in a book when you can hear the guttural shrieks of agony and the hissing of my disintegration ability replayed over and over again in your head. Not that I'm really complaining though. I have all the time in the world to get my job done and make boss proud, which is all I could really ask for. I didn't want to spend a few weeks sleeping until this vacation was over, and so I tried to drive around and find somewhere to occupy the time. I don't live near many places for young guys like me to hang out, but I tried anyway. Needless to say, it was a monumental failure. I found going to the cinema a pricey chore that ultimately left me unsatisfied and annoyed at the lackluster customer service when I bought a bag of popcorn and my drink. Once I left the theatre, I just decided to drive around the town until my gas ran low so I could burn time. It wasn't a very fun way to spend a day, but it beats being cooped up at home. I couldn't help but feel annoyed that this forced sabbatical was taken away from my critically important duty of killing these things that go bump in the night. I know I sound like a broken record, but I still trusted what boss had planned for me, and so I did my best to take it all in my stride and come back to work better than ever. Or at least, that was my game plan. I'll admit it. I didn't follow my own advice for the first couple of days. My rigorous workout routine waxed and my normally airtight diet was gone in the wind, with cheap burgers and gas station hot dogs filling the void it left inside me. As you can imagine, I was completely miserable. Days and days without working made me realise just how meaningless life can get when you don't have a purpose. If I'm not able to do my job, then what's the point? That's all there is to my name, and that's all there will ever be. I know that sounds grim, but it's the honest truth. I was like this for maybe a week or 2. It was one of the toughest weeks I've had in a while. And thankfully, I was able to get out of this depressing funk, but not in a way I would ever expect. It happened around halfway through this sabbatical, and I was feeling as miserable as can be. I was at a gas station in God knows where, casually pumping gas into my car, snacking on a gas station deli sandwich. It tasted more like rubber than the ham and cheese it was supposed to be. but I was long past the point of caring what my food tasted like. Had it not been for the chilly wind, I might have just fallen asleep right there and then. I loved my spiffy army jackets, but it was by no means a warm coat, and the wind cut through my layers like a knife. And just as the nozzle clicked and stopped pumping the gas, I heard the doors of the mart beep open with an electronic click. 2 people exited the mart, one of which, a female, was holding a dark backpack, presumably chock full of items purchased from the mart. They both looked at me pumping my gas and strode towards me, looking like they were going to interrogate me or something. The girl carrying the bag had her hair dyed an ice-searing shade of minty green, which made it hard to focus on the expression she had when she came towards me. The other figure, a dark-skinned, youthful man, had his hands shoved into his warm, bright orange puffer jacket pockets, smiling a cocky grin like he was remembering some type of inside joke I wasn't aware of. Already, I could tell I wasn't going to like whatever conversation we were going to have. Even before I started working, I never really lived for social interactions. I preferred my own company instead. It doesn't help that I was already in a sour mood to begin with. "Hey, can we talk for a bit?" asked the male, his thick British accent making itself apparent. I closed my fuel door and faced both of them, finishing my sandwich with a final clumsy bite. "Sure, what's up?" I said, trying to sound disinterested and dry, hoping he would take the hint and leave me alone. He motioned to the girl beside him, and she dug out a leather journal from the giant backpack, and my ears perked up with curiosity. As much as I wish it was, I knew that journal wasn't just any nice-looking journal. It was a special one given by boss to his employees. It looks just like any other, but something in my brain just screamed, "This is my journal. There are many others like it, but this is mine." The contents inside were a list of every proxy he hired in this area, he said, presumably meaning Canada. I never bothered to ask whether this area actually meant out of the country or not, but I feel like I knew what he was implying. It wasn't a small book either. There was a fair amount of pages on it, so clearly Boss had a preference in who he hires. The most concerning part of that reveal was trying to figure out how he got his hands on that journal. The easy explanation would be that he is a fellow employee, but I just wasn't totally convinced he was. He and the girl beside him lacked the professional and dangerous aura I had come to expect from someone in my line of work. Up until that point, I hadn't actually met any co-workers, so I was less than impressed with what I saw. The man dressed in orange flipped through the book casually, skipping every page until he reached one of the very last pages at the end of the book. He then turned it around and showed me the pages, where I saw my own name written in full. "This is you, right? You're Jamie Spears?" he asked, exhaling a thick cloud of smoke from the crisp winter air. There are a few things I regret doing when I first agreed to become a proxy killer, and signing my full name to Boss was one of them. I could have just as easily told him some random nickname and gotten the job all the same, but I didn't think ahead and signed with my real name, meaning that anyone could find me pretty easily, co-worker or not. "Who's asking?" I responded, trying to cover my freezing lips with my jacket. The man smiled and handed the book back over to the green-haired girl, who shoved it back inside the bag. "Hey, don't worry about it, mate. I'm a proxy, just like you. We've been working for Boss for a couple of years now. You can call me Orion," he said, dusting off the shoulder of his coat. I didn't initially recognize that name from my leather booklet, but afterward I did end up checking it, and sure enough, both he and the girl beside him were right there on the pages. Both were listed with a first name only, which means I had to accept they were more prepared than I was when they first signed up. "Shit, I forgot Doritos. Don't tell him anything yet. I'll be back in a second," the green-haired girl said, marching back into the shop to grab what she was apparently missing. Was a bag of nacho chips really worth holding off this conversation? I thought to myself, feeling a little bit peeved that I had to wait even longer to get this conversation over. "That's Amira, my roommate. She's a proxy partner. She's kind of scatterbrained, but she's a hard worker," Orion said, smiling brightly. Abandoning us for Doritos didn't give me the strongest impression, but whatever. I just had to take his word for it. I stood there and shivered in the cold, but Orion just looked completely calm, like the frosty breeze wasn't even there. "So, how long you been working?" he asked me quietly, briefly eyeing around the gas station, checking for anyone else that might be around us. "A couple of months," I said dryly. I didn't bother asking him the same question because, well, I didn't really care. Unfortunately, he didn't seem to take the hint and continued to talk anyway. "I knew you were a rookie, but I didn't think you were that new," he said, sounding like he was vaguely mocking me. "I've been doing jobs for Boss for a couple of years now, but I've hardly got any action compared to the others. Hell, I've gone on like one mission in the last month, and even on those monthly missions, I barely have to try. I just get in and out," he said, laughing with a low, throaty chuckle. One mission in a month. Had I still been eating my gas station sandwich, I might have dropped it out of shock. How in God's name this clown was getting by with such a low amount of hits was... "You go on one mission a month?" "I've been doing them bi-weekly at the worst of times and weekly on busier times. Why would Boss even hire you in the first place?" I stated, hoping to make myself sound mean and get him to start taking his job more seriously. From what little he said to me, I believe that he isn't really putting in his 100%, and I feel that I need to give him a metaphorical kick in the pants to stop him from being so lazy. Orion's smile dropped off his face, and he shot me an expression. There was confusion, anger, and curiosity all at once. His eyes squinted, and his forehead furrowed. "Have you been taking our hits?" he said, sounding deadly quiet. I have no real way to confirm or deny his suspicions, so I was in a tight spot. I've never seen or heard of him or Amira before, and so I was doubtful. Before I could give any answer, Amira rushed out the store, tightly clutching the straps of her backpack. "Oh, okay, I got everything we need. Now we can talk," she said, huffing and puffing like she was out of breath. Ryan and I exchanged an uneasy look with each other, but we kept our mouths shut. I already knew he didn't like me, but that's not my concern. If Boss has him doing a monthly task in my area compared to my countless tasks, then I struggle to see him as anything other than some muck, a proxy intern if you will. I could tell that his expression was saying, "We'll talk about this later," and I tried giving him the same message. Amira noticed us pointing daggers at each other and spoke up. "Oh, come on. I was there for like 5 minutes. Have you guys not made any small talk?" she questioned, a sly grin stretching across her face. "Was buying chips really more than important than this?" I asked her, looking for a way out of staring at Orion. She looked at me confused. "Buy?" she said, raising her eyebrow at me. "Did you not go to the store to buy chips?" She licked her lips for a few seconds, and then her eyes lit up. "Oh, that's what you meant. No, I stole this," she said casually, and my breath caught in my throat. "First, they tell me that they work once a month, and now they're stealing food from gas stations. With every passing second, I continue to wonder how these two even got hired in the first place. Boss specifically said to me that he's looking for positive qualities in his employees, which neither of these two had. Why are you stealing from a gas station? How do you expect to react when they catch you in the act?" I scolded her, sounding more like a cop than I really intended to. She lazily shrugged her shoulders. "Trust me, I'm not getting caught anytime soon." "Trust me, I'm not getting caught anytime soon," she said with a wink, nudging her arm to Orion, who couldn't help but chuckle. "Yeah, we're pretty good at our job. Stealing, that is," he elaborated. I wanted to say something about their theft habits, but at this point I had more important conversation topics to dredge through. "So, what's up? Why did you two want to talk to me?" I asked them. "Well, we're trying to really branch out and meet other fellow co-workers. We've been employed for like 3 years now, and we've only gotten to see a handful of hits. Now that we both have more free time than ever, we can finally do that. Mind if we ask you some questions?" Orion said, sounding excited. I wasn't really sure of what I was expecting, but an interview wasn't very high on my imaginary list of my first encounters with my co-workers. "Sure, I guess. Ask away," I said nonchalantly. Orion and Amira shared an excited look, but that quickly faded and turned into one of concern. "Can we ask a favour from you?" Amira asked, her eyes glued to the ground. I nodded my head, preparing to accommodate whatever they asked. "Do you mind if we bum a ride off you?" she asked sheepishly, rocking from side to side like her request was particularly embarrassing for her to say. At first, I was a bit confused because I assumed they drove here on their own, but the gas station was devoid of any cars other than my own. "You don't have a car? Did you two walk the whole way here?" I asked, struggling not to laugh over the idea of them two walking for God knows how long just to reach a gas station. Amira's face flushed, and she somehow looked more sheepish and shy than before. "Stop laughing. It's cold out here, and Orion won't share any of his powers with me. Please, just give us a ride," she squeaked, hugging herself to try and conceal some level of warmth. I'll be honest, talking to these two made me forget that they most likely had superpowers in the same way I did. They just seemed too normal to have them. They didn't feel like proxies to me. Even now, I struggle to see Boss choosing them and granting them their own abilities. Orion's grin grew wider, and he scratched his short curly black hair. "You know more than anyone that my powers only work through contact. All you had to do was ask me to hug you for it to work," he said, stretching his arms out wide like he was bracing for when she jumped into his arms to activate his powers, whatever they may be. "No, stop suggesting lewd things like that," Amira mumbled, trying to hide her blushing face underneath her black sweater. "All right, fine. Get in the car and tell me where you want me to drop you off," I said, sounded defeated. Orion shot me a thumbs up, and they both walked towards my car, and we all hopped in. Orion leaped into the passenger seat, and Amira flopped down onto the back seats. We all buckled up, and I entered the location Orion gave me into my GPS and started following the path it laid out for me, eager to drop these two off and hopefully never have to speak to them again. Obviously, they aren't as annoying as the creatures I'm tasked to kill on a regular basis, but my antisocial nature was screaming at me to avoid these two. The address they gave me was an apartment complex situated about 20 minutes drive, which makes for the fact that they walked here all the more amusing. For the first couple of seconds, we all sat there in silence, listening to the sound of my car's well-worn engine buckling in the snowy roads. It was a surreal type of quiet outside, where no animals dared to make a sound to interrupt the ominous emptiness of the world around us. Not a single streetlight was present, and no trees stood by us. It was just completely flat, snow-covered land surrounding us. I may have been in a car with two other people, but I felt completely alone. "You mind turning on the radio or something? It's kind of awkward without something to listen to," Orion requested. "No can do. Radio's broken. I have a couple of CDs in my console, if you want to choose one," I suggested. Most of my CDs were worn old alternative rock bands that kids used to listen to back in the early 2000s. I have no idea what Orion's music taste is, but it wouldn't surprise me if he turned off a Blink-182 album. After a few seconds of flipping through CD cases, he huffed and slammed the console shut. "Since your music taste is complete garbage, let's just cut to the chase, okay?" he said, a clear undertone of annoyance in his voice. Normally I try and refute someone disrespecting my music taste, but I really couldn't be bothered to care anymore. "Sure, whatever, ask away." Orion licked his lips and cleared his throat. "How did you first get hired as a proxy?" he questioned. "Summer school," I said offhandedly, not fully registering the question. Once he gave me a perplexed glance, I knew I had to elaborate. "I went to class and it was being overrun by a bunch of monster escapees from the pandemonium. Boss scouted me and hired me based on a bunch of favourable qualities he said he saw in me. Bravery, heroism, etc. Since then, I've been working for him. How's that?" I was expecting him to be satisfied, but both he and Amira had a look of concern on their faces. "Jesus, during school? I knew Boss liked to hire young faces, but I didn't think he'd go that young," Orion mumbled, sounding deeply troubled. "Young? I'm 17, and that's hardly young at all. How old are you two?" I asked. 20, they said together. "Don't mind him. We're just not used to working with kids," Amira remarked, and Orion muffled a chuckle. "Who are you calling a kid? I'm like only a couple of years younger than you. And besides, this kid gets more contracts than both of you combined," I said, hoping that statement stung them both. Amira was laughing in the back, but Orion gave me a hard sneer. "Watch your mouth, pretty boy. We've been in this business longer than you have," he said, his grin revealing his bright white teeth. He didn't sound all that upset when I mentioned his lack of contracts compared to me, and so I guess he was already over it. As if being called a kid wasn't insulting enough, being called pretty boy felt like a slap in the face. I'm a lot of things, but certainly not pretty. At least, not enough to be mocked for it. Amira burst into a side-splitting laughter at that nickname, and I wanted to shrink into my seat and not be anywhere near these two. "I mean, it's true. You want to tell me what kind of eyeliner you wear? Your lashes are longer than mine," she snickered in between hefty breaths. I knew she was only trying to give me shit for an innocent laugh, but I couldn't help but feel a little humiliated. "For the record, I do not wear eyeliner, and I don't have long eyelashes. Not that long, at least." Trying to change the topic, I asked both of them a question. "How did you two get recruited?" I waited for their snickering to die down, and then they gave me that answer. "I got recruited before she did, back when I was living in the UK, Orion elaborated. "I think I was at the market having myself an early morning jog. I was minding my own business when I happened to spot an older looking guy sitting by the edge of a dock, just relaxing. Normally, I wouldn't have paid him any mind, but that was until this absolutely massive, ill-looking creature just snapped him up and dragged him underwater like it was the most casual thing in the world. I ran down to the docks, but all I could see was the puddle of red slowly growing bigger. Some wild shit, no?" The way he phrased the story sounded like he was more focused on the spectacle of it all, rather than the fact that he was a witness to a murder. "I ran off trying to look for someone to help me, but when I started running, there was this gross inky black symbol all over the ground. You know what I'm talking about, right? The inky black symbol was something my boss liked to tag around people he has his eye on, and at that point, he started paying attention to Orion. From there, Orion explained that when he opened the door to a community centre, he found himself standing in Boss's office, and when Boss propositioned him for the job, he took it, and the rest is history. Overall, it was noticeably more mundane than my recruitment story, but I've come to believe that mine is just particularly strange among others. I looked back at Amira, who was munching on handfuls of that precious Doritos bag she stole, and decided to ask her a question. "What about you? What's your origin?" She glanced at me and gave me an uneasy look, and she started to chew her food slowly, like each bite was done with careful consideration. And finally, she swallowed her meal. "I'm sorry, I don't really want to talk about it," she said, and then continued to stuff her face with nacho chips. She sounded acutely melancholic with her answer, and so whatever her origin may be, it couldn't be good. "Let me ask you this. What's your superpower?" Orion interjected, reaching his hand behind the seat to grab a few chips from Amira's bag. I think I could do a good enough job explaining it, but I was feeling flashy and wanted to do something special. "You got a coin or something?" I asked, which made him dig into his jeans pocket and pluck out a dirt-covered quarter. Carefully steering my car with one hand, I used my free hand to grasp the coin and dissolve it, turning it into what looked like dart ash. Orion's eyes widened in surprise, and Amira coughed on her chips. "Holy shit! You can dissolve things? That's so cool!" she said between choking on cheesy chip crumbs. I flicked the remaining ash off my fingers and adjusted the collar of my jacket. "I mean, I guess. I'm sure you have something cooler," I said, hoping they would both show me their powers. Orion rubbed his hands together and smiled a mischievous smile. "Say no more. I'll show you right here what I can do," he said pridefully. He shoved his hands back into his pockets and sank back into his seat like he was waiting for something to happen. The car was silent from then on as we waited for something to happen, which gave me time to check the GPS to see how close I was to the location. The barren, snowy fields were gone and replaced with grey and brown concrete apartment complexes linked with each other, forming one unappealing block of living quarters. I could see a closed shopping mall and various stores in the distance. All of their neon signs were as dark as day. "Do you feel it yet?" Orion asked, avidly awaiting my response. I tried waving my hand around in the car, looking around my seat, even sniffing the air, but I couldn't spot any real changes inside the car. I thought he was just baiting me for a reaction and didn't activate his powers at all. What am I supposed to see here? What are you doing? Are you sure you didn't notice anything? Nothing at all? He said, his sly tone sneaking into his voice. I waited for something to happen again, but still, nothing. It was starting to get stuffy in the car, and so I went to crank off the heat, but noticed it was already turned off. You figured it out yet? He said, sounding immensely self-satisfied. You make things hot? I sighed, sounding thoroughly unimpressed. I wasn't sure what to expect with him, but being a glorified air conditioner was not really something I'd picture as being a particularly threatening power to execute monsters with. I still really have trouble to imagine these two, or more so Orion specifically, going on jobs and taking out monsters. I guess that's why Boss gives him such a light road. I guess he noticed my lack of excitement because he looked pretty offended. Hey, don't write me off yet. You have no idea how useful this power is, he cried, pulling out his hand from his jacket pocket and revealing that it was glowing as bright as orange as his coat, like it was a cartoon kettle overheating. I mean, I don't doubt that it could be useful in some situations, but if it works if anything like my power, it just seems like a less effective version of what I can do. I'd rather be able to instantly disintegrate something via touch, rather than slowly heat something and still require contact. The GPS told me that I was only a kilometre away from their location, and so I began to speed up and turn into the parking lot. Alright, you're here. Now you can get out my car. Orion chuckled and gently punched my shoulder, and I felt the hot sting of his orange-tinted hand. I recoiled in pain and jumped in my seat. Amira rolled off her seat and grabbed her massive backpack full of stolen snacks. Thanks for the ride, mate. I owe you, Orion said cheerfully. I gave him an obligatory smile of acknowledgement and rolled up his window. Amira tapped me on my shoulder and handed me a slip of paper with both of their phone numbers written on it. Keep those, just in case. You don't know when things can get hairy and you'll need our help, she reassured. I wasn't planning on calling them anytime soon, but I appreciated her offer nonetheless. I slipped the note into my jacket pocket and Amira hopped out of the door and closed it, and both of them started walking towards the complex. Just as I was pulling out of the lot, I heard Amira shouting at me. Thanks for the ride, pretty boy. I white-knuckle gripped the steering wheel as I drove off. Sorry if my first meeting with my co-workers felt a little mundane, but that was the story in full. It's weird to think that these people are just regular people beneath it all. And I think in retrospect, I owe those two a lot. They may appear incompetent, but those two had quite an effect on me. Hell, I didn't even notice that my mood was lifted significantly when I talked to them. They certainly aren't boring. Wow, fantastic stuff there by HHeyPeter, the author. Do take time to check out the wonderful Reddits. I'll leave a link to that, of course, in the description box below. As ever, guys, please do let us know down below in the comments what you thought. Please do like and share. It really does help build the channel and our community further. And of course, don't forget to hashtag TeamFEAR. I hope you all had a wonderful week and are looking forward to relaxing with some good food and wonderful friends and family over the weekend. And above all, remember, be safe, not sorry.